being rich is essentially being able to pay your mortgage, pay your rent, go to dinner, pay for your car, pay for your car insurance, having a good income. That's rich. But wealth, on the other hand, that's going to be something that you don't see. And the hard thing about wealth is it's actually very hard to emulate because wealth is something that's usually hidden. And the way that we look at wealth, and this is my true belief in wealth, it's the money that you don't see. What's up, everyone? Micah Smith here. We are going to talk about something so incredibly important and impactful. Obviously, this show is about credit and wealth and finances. And today, I want to jump into something so important that I just feel like is not spoken enough about. Recently, I was highlighted on Fox News for what credit scores are keeping us from. And they are keeping us from building real wealth. And I want to get into that today. So it's funny when I teach my classes, or maybe I'm a guest on a podcast, or I run into somebody and they're like, oh my gosh, I know what you do. Like, okay, what's the fastest way to boost my credit score? Well, I'm always going to say it depends, right? Because every single person is different. Your credit is truly your financial fingerprint. So it's unique to you. It's unique to your identity. It's unique to your spending habits. So, and that's actually what we're going to be discussing today is spending habits. So when I teach my classes, I always discuss this lovely pie chart here. So if you want to Google it, it's just a FICO pie chart, and it's how your credit is broken down. And one thing I want to discuss with everyone is what a third of your entire credit score comes from. So 30% of your entire credit score comes from how you manage credit cards. People are always amazed when I teach on this topic. So when we think about credit cards, the amount of people that I speak to that don't have an understanding of what credit cards are for, how to properly use them, is greater than people who do understand how to use them correctly. And so when I do teach on my classes, and I teach on this little pie chart here, one of the biggest things that I always emphasize to people is I show them the difference between, right, what your credit cards are worth versus, say, your installment loans. And to give everyone a little bit of an education on what an installment loan is, an installment loan is a mortgage, it's a car loan, it's a personal loan, it's a student loan. Anything with a fixed monthly payment and a fixed interest rate is going to be an installment loan. So there's a lot less emphasis on installment loans versus credit cards. So installment loans are worth 10% of our credit score versus credit cards that are worth 30%. Now, one of the biggest principles I've taught for years is that there's no bias towards wealth in the algorithms. So what does that mean? That means that they don't look at the size of the credit card that you carry. So if you have a $500 credit card, it's essentially going to weigh the same as, say, a $10,000 credit card. They're equal in weight. So what it comes down to is percentage used. So in my classes, we talk actually about amounts owed. So when we're looking at credit cards and we're looking at how someone can maximize their credit scores, I always ask, I'm like, okay, so besides making your payment on time, how else can we get points out of our credit card? And the answer is make sure that the balance is nice and low by the time it's reported to the credit bureaus. So here's one caveat. So the interesting thing about a lot of people, so we will be pulling reports week after week after week, because obviously my company, that's what we do. And we help people repair and restore their credit. So we look at your credit report. So we'll look at a credit report with a client and we'll say, okay, I'm a little confused here. I am seeing a positive trade line, and a trade line is things like credit cards and auto loans and mortgages, and we'll see a positive trade line like a credit card, and we'll see that it's in dispute. which means that they filed a dispute either with the credit card company or with the bureaus saying something was incorrect. And we ask them, why did you do that? And they will say, because the credit card balance is wrong. And we're like, oh, I understand now. So what we do is we talk about reporting date versus due date in all of our classes. And so they'll be showing us their balance of their credit card currently, and we'll be seeing a different balance on the credit report. And so in my classes, I always ask, I'm like, is this wrong? Is this incorrect? And everyone's like, yes, this is outrageous. How could they? They're trying to screw us over. And I'm like, okay, got it. Let's learn how this works. So there's a lot of nonsense looming out there as far as, oh, if you pay your credit card twice, you're going to trick the algorithms. There's no tricking algorithms, guys. It's a mathematical equation, right? It's set up to calculate things in a certain way. There's no tricking it. I'm going to tell you, though, how to work the system in your benefit, because if you learn how to use the system, right, properly, then it will work in your benefit. And all that it is making sure that the balance on your credit card is paid down, and I'll tell you the exact percentage here in a second, but it's paid down to a very low amount by the time it reports. So everyone's like, okay, so I paid it down by the due date, and so that's not the correct date. And I'm like, nope, that is not the correct date. It's not the due date, right? And it's not going to be any other date except for, so look for verbiage like this. If you're looking at your credit card, you're going to see a statement that says statement balance as of, and you will see a date and you will see a number, and that number will have been reported to the credit bureaus that month. So the higher the usage on the credit card, right, the lower your score is going to be. So yesterday, I actually was a guest on another podcast, and one of the questions was, they said, can you just define credit? Like, what is the purpose of credit? And credit is a couple of things. And to really simplify it, we just simply say credit is two things. One, it is your financial fingerprint. And two, it is a way for an institution to assess your likelihood of default. That is the whole purpose of credit, is they're always trying to assess your likelihood of default and or your ability to pay something back. And so one of the biggest things that we always teach our clients is managing credit cards is absolutely critical to getting yourself into premium tiers. And so to get to the actual percentage used, so everyone is like 30%, 50%, 100%. So if you're at 100% utilization, you lose 100% of the points you could obtain from that one particular card. So if you have one credit card and it's maxed out, you lose all of the points from that particular credit card. So we have a lot of clients in our program, and I have been through scenario after scenario after scenario where someone will go through our program and inaccurate items are being removed from the credit report. So we're repairing it, but the scores are not moving, and they get so discouraged. And they're like, why are my scores not moving? And this is something that we have to teach them, but it's a very difficult thing to understand if you've never been taught this before. So to see it, to understand it, to have this information readily given to you so you can apply it is going to be critical to your overall financial success and to your ability to actually build real wealth over your lifetime. So the magic number, just so everybody knows where you should have each individual credit card at, and it's not each credit card added together, okay? So store cards, credit cards, lines of credit, this is what we're discussing. We're not discussing anything else, just those three things. They're called revolving accounts. You want them to reflect 6% utilization or less in the perfect world by the time that they report to the credit bureaus. That's absolutely critical, because if you don't have it at that low utilization mark, what ends up happening is your credit score will actually suffer. So what I want to do is I actually want to go over some pretty wild statistics right now to give people an idea of how badly their misuse of funds is keeping them broke. And I think I've brought up a multitude of times, and I'm going to say it now, Morgan Housel, I cannot wait to have you on my podcast. I'm dying to have you on my podcast. I'm going to reference a lot of things in his book, The Psychology of Money. He's amazing. He was recently just a guest on Ed Mylett's show, who's also one of my mentors. And he says so many powerful things. And I just want to discuss a little bit. I want to talk about money, and I want to talk about some really great principles that he highlights. And a couple of them are, so he gives a story, and I'm going to start with the story. And this actually was told by John Bogle, who was the Vanguard founder, and he passed away in 2019, unfortunately. But he told a story about money that highlights something that we just don't think about enough. So there was a party on Shelter Island, and it was given by a billionaire. And this gentleman, and I'm actually going to leave out the names, he talked about himself in such a way. He was talking about how much money he had earned as a hedge fund manager and how he had made more money in a single day than Heller had ever earned from his wildly popular novel Catch-22 over its whole history. And so the response to me was profound. So this individual who he was putting down, or so he thought putting down, responded with, he's like, yeah. He's like, well, I have something that you're never going to have. He's like, I have enough. And to me, that is a question that I think so many of us need to ask ourselves is, are we ever in a place where we are content with what we have? And are we in a place where we can say, this is enough? And you see so many people, and I see it every single day. I see people who make $2 million a year, who spend $2,100,000, who have nothing to their name. And one of the biggest things that they talk about is the difference between being wealthy and being rich. And to him, being rich is essentially being able to pay your mortgage, pay your rent, go to dinner, pay for your car insurance, having a good income, that's rich. But wealth, on the other hand, that's going to be something that you don't see. And the hard thing about wealth is it's actually very hard to emulate because wealth is something that's usually hidden. And the way that we look at wealth, and this is my true belief in wealth, it's the money that you don't see. And so it's the money that is put aside in savings accounts and investments. It's the money that is unseen. And so what we have seen, and one of the things that I did talk about on Fox News is, as we talked about just where we're at in our economy, we are in unprecedented times right now, where as a country, the United States of America, the citizens within it, we have reached an all-time high as far as credit card debt. We are at $1.21 trillion in credit card debt as consumers. And that is an absolutely terrifying number. And I crunched some wild numbers for everyone today. And one of the biggest things that I do for you as my listeners and as my viewers is I spend a lot of time preparing for every single one of these podcasts because I want you to get as much as you possibly can out of it. And I want to ensure, like, I'm giving you my time and I want you to just get as much as you possibly can out of this. So what I crunched the numbers. So the average American right now, they're saying, so this was last year, they gave these numbers at the end of 2024. They said the average consumer is carrying $6,329 in credit card debt. That's the average consumer. So check this out. This is what I did. So what I did is I took two different scenarios. I took two different people, and I took person A with a 580 credit score, and I took person B with a 780 credit score, and I did a comparison. So what I did is I did the comparison of if you have $7,000 in credit card debt. So I just rounded up, right? So if you have $7,000 in credit card debt and you're person A with a 580 credit score, roughly, we'll just say, so I went in at 22.57% APR, okay? And I just said, okay, if we make the minimum monthly payment on this credit card, let's calculate how much interest will be paid and how long will it take to pay off $7,000. So I want you to brace yourself for this because this is staggering. It will take you 104 years to pay off $7,000 if you pay the minimum payment every single month, and your total interest that you will pay on that credit card is $71,470.07. So basically, you are going to die with that debt because most people do not live to 104 years old. On top of that, now if you go to person B, right? So person B, who has a credit score. So 780 is really what you should be shooting for. Anything past that is really just bragging rights. So if we look at person B, right, now the interest is going to be roughly about 12% or maybe a little bit less. So if you just pay the minimum monthly payment, which is, just so you know, it's about 2% of whatever the balance is, the total interest is only going to be $6,241.50, and it will only take you 20 years to pay off. So I want you to really ingest these numbers. That is, guys, that's a difference of 84 years and a difference of just rough figures, $65,000 for one credit card. Most of my clients are coming to me because they want to obtain a mortgage. When you calculate these numbers and you're calculating them and you're getting a mortgage, okay, so I do so many classes. And so on average, say you're trying to purchase a $550,000 home. And again, these are very roundabout numbers, okay? So, but if you're purchasing a $550,000 home, on average, if you say you're at a 620, versus a 780. Okay, those are the numbers that I compare in the mortgage industry. I won't even go as low as some lenders will go. I know lenders that will give you a mortgage at a 500 credit score. It's highway robbery how much you will end up paying for that loan. So if you look at the numbers, the difference between a 620 and a 760, let's say a $550,000 loan, on average, it's about $550 difference a month in payment. And you're roughly going to be saving anywhere between $150,000 to $250,000 to $350,000 in interest alone over the lifetime of that loan. So 30 years. So it's a huge chunk. So, and I gave a very large window as far as like how much you save because it really does depend on interest rates. Interest rates are high, that number gets bigger, right? And the bigger your loan amount, the bigger the spread. I mean, it's crazy. We had an individual come to us. Their credit score had dropped to a 620 and they needed to be in premium tiers. They were trying to get a jumbo loan. Well, we put them back into premium tiers, and in premium tiers, the monthly payment, they were buying a $1.5 million home in New York. The monthly payment alone went down $1,700 a month. On top of that, in the mortgage industry, the savings from not having to pay points, they were going to have to pay roughly about $40,000 in points to buy down their rate. It is astronomical, the amount of money that people are spending unnecessarily because they don't understand that the cost is not the cost, and it's going to be derived from your credit score. Understand, the riskier you look on paper, the more everything is going to cost you. So I give this breakdown to a lot of my clients, and I give them a story because stories seem to be the most impactful. So let's just say you have a really good friend, and your really good friend wants to borrow money from you. And let's say it's in the case of a home, right? It's a very large lump sum. So your friend comes to you and they're like, okay, I would like to borrow $500,000 from you. And you're like, okay, let me see your credit report. So you look at their credit report and you see that they're over leveraged. They're maxed out on all their credit cards. They're making their minimum monthly payments, yet they have a pretty decent income, right? And technically they would qualify for the loan, but they're like maxed out. Let me ask you this question. If you see someone, your best friend, is maxed out on all of their credit cards and they ask to borrow money from you, are you going to want to give it to them? And are you going to want to give it to them at this ridiculously low cost? The answer is no. Why would you want to give someone money at this ridiculously low cost when you're looking at them saying, you're one bad thing away happening from losing everything? And let's just face it. I mean, the likelihood, guys, of something catastrophic happening in our lives, unfortunately, is pretty high. And this is the importance of me talking about this topic today, right? So how probable is it that you get into a car accident, you get cancer, you lose a job, you get divorced, right? The loss of someone significant in your life. How probable is that? It's pretty dang high. And it's not something that I constantly think about because it's honestly, it's quite depressing. But if you think about it, right? So what is the purpose of putting all this money aside? It's because, right, it's great to have a plan, but understand this, plan on the plan not working out. And that's why it's so important that we as consumers, we learn to manage our spending habits. And I'm going to be bringing on some specialists onto the show that talk about spending habits and how we can really buckle down and how we can do better. And one of the biggest things that I'm understanding, what I am seeing is I'm seeing that in this society, with social media being what social media is, and there's such a strong emphasis on the things we have. I read something so powerful, and it said that nobody is as impressed by the things you have as you are. And in fact, they say, when I'm looking at these extraordinary things that somebody has, it doesn't make me admire that person at all. All it makes me do is say, I wonder what I can do so I can get that. But it doesn't make you like the person more. It doesn't make you admire them more. And so often people are trying to impress others with stuff, and they're placing their value behind stuff. And I'm going to tell everyone here right now that one of the things that I discussed with all of my customers at the very end of the year last year was presence, being present, like actually present, versus giving someone a tangible gift. And there was a story that I just couldn't get out of my head when I was thinking about this. And I get very emotional talking about it because I get very close to all of my consumers. And it was a husband and a wife, and very, very lovely couple. And they had been trying to buy a home for a very, very long time. Now, the husband's credit, we had gotten him to where he needed to be. He learned the principles. He did what he was supposed to do. He stopped unnecessary spending. He brought down his credit cards. There was a lot of stuff on his credit report that didn't need to be there because it was reported incorrectly. So he was good to go. But the wife, on the other hand, now mind you, these were not young people. Now, they're both grandmas and grandpas, okay? And they were trying to put themselves into a better situation. And the wife, on the other hand, God bless her heart, she was the kindest, sweetest woman you will ever have an opportunity to speak to. But one of the biggest things that she struggled with is she could not stop spending. And so, we used to joke around and laugh about it, but one day I got really serious with her, and I'm not going to use her real name. I'm just going to call her Mrs. Smith because my name is Micah Smith, Mrs. Smith as well. So we're going to call her Mrs. Smith. And I'm like, Mrs. Smith, I'm like, you are single-handedly stopping you and your husband from moving forward with your home because you refuse to face the music. She refused to stop spending. And the spending was not on something that was needed. It wasn't like they were living off their credit cards and they were under financial duress. It's quite the opposite. It was, well, the grandbabies need the presents. And I'm like, the grandbabies don't need the presents. The grandbabies are going to remember more about how you were there for them, how you loved them, how you treated them, how you were teaching them things and lessons and values that are going to well serve them past your lifetime. It's the legacy that you leave behind of who you were, not what you gave in regards to tangible items. People are not going to remember the tangible items that you gave them. They're going to remember how you made them feel. And I had a very strongly worded conversation with her discussing how this was single-handedly keeping her stuck. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter. It was something where she's like, well, it is what it is. I enjoy doing it. So unfortunately, being myopic ended up making it so her and her husband never moved, and they are still stuck in the same situation that they are 5 years later, and they refuse to change their habits. And it's a really sad thing. And one of my greatest mentors in life, John Maxwell, actually, he gave a really great scenario, and he talks about growth more often than he talks about goals. And he talks about this he actually breaks it down in chapters, and he talks about the patterns that we tend to go through in life. And tell me how maybe relatable this is to you in your own life. But for me, this was actually very profound. And so he said, chapter 1, you walk down the street and you see a hole and you fall in. And it takes you a while to climb out, and you're like, that was painful. But then you get out and you keep walking. Chapter number 2, you walk down the same street, you fall into the same hole because you actually just decide to ignore it. And you fall in, you get hurt. It takes you a really long time to climb out, but you climb out, and then we move on to chapter number 3. Now, chapter number 3, you walk down the street, you see the hole, you fall into the hole because you say, that's my pattern. Now you say, this is who I am. This is who I've always been. This is the way it's always going to be. So you climb out of the hole eventually. It's extremely painful, but then you get out. Chapter number 4, you walk down the same street. You see the hole. You go around the hole and you continue walking. But chapter number 5, and this is what everybody should be attaining for. Chapter number 5 is the person that we're hoping to help you become. Chapter number 5 is, I walked down a different street. And that is exactly what every single person that needs to hear this today needs to hear. You need to start walking down a different street. We talk about in my classes so much about insanity, and I'm sure you've probably heard this before, but if you haven't, right? Insanity is essentially doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. And so oftentimes people wonder, why am I in the situation that I'm in? Well, take a moment and sit back and reflect on all the choices that you've made single-handedly. Life is a series of choices, and that is also why I never judge, because I am 2, maybe 1 bad choice from being in the exact same boat as somebody else, and a boat that I don't want to be in. And we have to remember that that is one thing that we all have, is we all have freedom of choice. And that, bringing it back to credit, is the reason why they put so much emphasis onto our credit cards, because we have the freedom of choice. We can max them out. We can go over the limit. We can, just pay the minimum payment. They're trying to take a look at your overall behaviors and your patterns. And these patterns, right, are what constitute our financial makeup. And so if we can learn better financial habits, right, now we are going to be building real wealth. So I actually didn't get the numbers on the average of what a person pays in total every day, year, month in interest. And I really want to find out those numbers. But I can tell you, right, we're seeing numbers, most people are anywhere between $500 to $1,000 a month in interest in my program, most of those people. So I want to give you a crazy, crazy statistic. And if you don't know who Warren Buffett is, you need to look at Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett is known for his investing and for investing very, very well. He's a very wealthy man. And the effects of compounding are mind-blowing. And it's kind of funny because when I've taught my classes side by side with someone who specializes in finance, I show people the power of compounding. And it's amazing how people don't understand it, because I've had people fight with me saying, oh, if you invest $500 every month, it's only going to be $180,000 over 30 years, because they don't understand what compounding is. And so let's just take the average person, and let's just say the average person got a home at a 620 credit score versus, say, a 780. On average, they're paying, let's say, $500 more a month just in their home in interest. If you were to allocate that same $500 a month in interest, because you came to me, you fixed your credit, you learned the principles, you put the time in, if you took that same $500 and you allocated that, and so you put it into the S&P 500, and I know the stock market is down, but over the last 30 years, the growth in the S&P 500 has been astronomical. So over the last 30 years, had you invested $500 a month, right, the average rate of return has actually been very, very high. The total number that you would actually see would be $1,005,016 in your investment gain. You would have over $1 million if you invested $500 a month, right, versus paying an interest blindly just because you wanted what you wanted and you wanted it now. We live in a microwave society, and this is probably one of the biggest frustrations that I have, especially when it comes to credit and purchasing things, and big purchases at that, is people have this expectation that I got myself into this mess and I should be able to get myself out very, very quickly. And it doesn't work like that. And one of my favorite preachers on the whole planet, Steven Furtick, he says something really great. He said this in one of his sermons. He said, you can't pray your way out of a situation that you behaved your way into it. And simply put, you can't ask for a miracle. You have to face the music. Some things are just going to require time and patience and persistence to rectify and get yourself back into a better place. And I think the biggest thing when it comes to money and spending, and we talk about this with our clients every single day, is when you invest in you, right? That is the most important investment you can make. And one of the questions we always ask our clients is, have you ever, I'm going to backtrack for a second, because have you ever been at a point in your life where, and maybe this is something you do every day, but have you ever just negotiated with yourself, like, that's too much money, I'm not going to spend my money on that, and you are always evaluating the cost of something, like constantly evaluating the cost? Well, I can tell you I have done that. I have constantly evaluated the cost, and I have actually trained my mindset to evaluate the cost like this. There's the cost of doing it, and then there's the cost of not doing it, right? Which one is greater? Because either way, you're going to pay for it. So let's just stick to credit. If you fix your credit, what's the cost? This much. If you don't fix your credit, what's the cost? This much. And that's the math, and that's the reality that I am finding most people don't want to face. And one of the biggest questions I have for you is, what is the last thing that you bought or purchased that was of actual, real value? What was the last thing that you purchased or bought that was of real value? Ask yourself that. And if you don't like your bank account, if you don't like where you're at financially, change it. Change it. It's that simple. One of my favorite people on the planet talks about it all the time. If you don't like your circumstances, change it. If you don't like the money that you're making, change it. If you don't like your surroundings, change it. You have the ability to change your life with your decisions. And it's not going to come easy. It's going to require extremely disciplined individuals to achieve great success. And that's why so few ever accomplish it. I think I'm going to repeat something that I said on the last podcast, but it's one of my favorite things on the planet. And John Maxwell says it all the time. He says, if hard work was the key to success, then most people would rather pick the lock. And I want to ask you that question. Is that you? Are you trying to pick the lock? Are you trying to cut corners to get to the next place in life? And anytime you cut corners, there's no real value being added to you or to anyone around you because you're not learning the lessons. You're not learning the principles that successful people abide and live by. And again, credit truly is the cornerstone to real wealth. Again, wealth, and we're going to go back to this again. So we talked about credit cards, we talked about spending, we talked about all the problems that it can cause. We talked about how long it takes to get out of debt, right? The higher the usage, right? The lower the credit score, the more everything is going to cost you, right? But if you can nix your spending, stop spending it on silly things, start putting it into something that is actually going to help you propel your growth forward, right? Think about what you're spending your money on, right? It's really, really important that we are not being myopic with our success. It's so critical. And what we want to go into next is we want to talk about the other repercussion of big mistakes that people make. And one of the biggest mistakes that we see people make, and they think it's no big deal. And again, this is around credit cards. It's one of my biggest pet peeves on the planet is we talk about missing payments on credit cards. So, right, you have a contract, you have an agreement with the credit card company, and so they say, okay, you're going to pay us this much amount, this much every single month, and this is your minimum payment. And now, of course, you can pay more. So if you make your minimum payment, right, then you're on time, you're still abiding by your contract. But if you go 60 days or later and you are late on your credit card, you're now in violation of your terms and conditions. So when that happens, they apply a penalty APR. So these numbers that I gave you as far as how much money you spend when you have these credit cards, right? That's like at 22%. You know what happens to your credit card APR when you miss a payment? That penalty APR goes all the way up to 29% plus. So usually it goes to that penalty APR for about 6 months or so. Now, if you continue to miss payments, right? So if you don't miss any more payments within a 6-month period, they'll usually put you back down to whatever you were before. But if you continue to miss payments, then they can actually keep you at that higher APR indefinitely. So it's these things that people, so not only has your credit score completely tanked, one missed payment, we talk about it every single day in our company. People are like, what's the big deal? I just missed a payment. How bad could it be? And I'm like, how bad it could be is it could have dropped your score 180 points and it stays on your report for 7 years from the date that it hits, unless a company like mine goes in and cleans it up, right? So not only that, but you got that penalty APR, and 48% of people right now are actually, they carry a balance on their credit cards 48% month to month. So that means if you think about, just think about the number of people and how much money they are spending unnecessarily. And again, not realizing it's impacting their credit, it's impacting everything else that they do. Well, guess what else your credit score is going to impact? If you decide that you don't want to pay down your credit cards, it also impacts your car insurance. Your car insurance is going to go up drastically if you decide that, hey, you know what? I'm not going to pay off my credit cards, right? I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to leave those high balances there, because most people just don't understand this stuff. They don't look at the numbers. They don't want to look at the numbers. They just wonder why the balance is never moving. But your car insurance will go up $100, $200 more a month because, again, you look risky on paper. It's indicative of a pattern, right? It's how you view money. It's your relationship with money. And so with that being said, I want to leave you with this. Spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. So if you are living in a society and you're absorbing all of this energy from media, from all of these companies that are marketing you to just be a consumer, right? If you're absorbing that energy and you're consumed with what other people think, just remember, like I said before, the only person that's really that impressed with the things that you have are you. Nobody else cares. So before you go out and you buy something unnecessarily, you swipe that credit card for that extra pair of shoes or that really fancy purse or that really fancy dress, or you just have to have that luxury vehicle, right? It's funny because people will appear rich on the outside, but they're one bad month from being completely broke. Just remember that. What you're seeing is not wealth. What you're seeing is riches. And I am a very strong and faith-based individual, and the Bible talks a lot about money, and it actually says money. So it's not that money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money that is the root of all evil. People will do unconscionable things to others for money. And that is when it becomes evil. The relationship with money needs to be this. You have to, and this is the way that I view money. And if you can change your relationship with money like I have over the years, then you're going to find yourself in a much different situation. The way I look at money now is I look at it as a tool. It is not anything but that. It is just a tool. It is a tool to be used to help others, to live a lifestyle that is nice, and to be able to give back in a way where others can obviously have a better life. And it's just a tool. That's all that it is. I have zero attachment to money whatsoever, right? It makes life easier. It makes life more fun, but I have zero attachment to it whatsoever. And you have to understand what it's for. And they say that in life, being happy, right? These experiences that we go through, the things that we go through in life, how we think about things, everything in life is about the meaning that we give it. And the meaning that we give things is going to essentially determine our overall happiness in life. And so whatever you attach meaning, whatever the meaning is that you attach to with money, right, is essentially going to be how you look at it, how you use it. And it's really going to determine your overall future. And I'm going to tell you this, finances are extremely stressful if they are not in order. And some of the most successful people that I know, right, and there's so much that I can tell you right now. The most successful people I know, they're very cash heavy. And it's like, well, what are you planning for? Well, again, plan that the plan is not going to go according to plan. That's one of the best things that you can do, because you just never know. Like, my husband is the king of this. He is Mr. Saver, Mr. Saver, Mr. Saver. When he made next to nothing, he saved. When he made a little bit more, he saved. And it's simply put, it's living beneath your means. It's living beneath your means. And I'm going to tell you some really cool things that I have learned over the years. I have many, many, many mentors. And one of my mentors taught me, he was like, you need to be able to live on 60% of your paycheck, and the other 40% needs to go away. That's what I do. I actually live on 60% of my paycheck. 40% of it I invest every single month. And I've been doing that for years. And if you can learn to live beneath your means, right? And that is how you build wealth. And anything above zero compounds on itself. Okay. So I hope that you learn a little bit more about compounding, but anything above zero will compound itself. And some great examples that they give about compounding is if you do 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 times, right, that's 64. But if you do 8 times 8 times 8 times 8 and you do it 8 times, right, it ends up to be like in like the billions. It's crazy how this number, this compounding, how it actually works. And something crazy about the compounding effect. So Warren Buffett, again, if you don't know who he is, you have to look him up. But 81.5 billion of Warren Buffett's net worth, right? So 84.5 billion came after his 65th birthday. if you think about that. That is insanity, right? So 81.5 billion of his 84.5 billion came after his 65th birthday. That's crazy. And that's the power of compounding. And so people always think like, well, I'm only going to be able to save this much and it doesn't matter. I was listening to Ed Mylett again this morning. Again, he's also one of my mentors as well. I take one of his programs, and when he was very, very young, he started putting $20 away every single month into a mutual fund. Every single month. And when he said he got to $300, he got really, really excited. And now, right, he's worth a lot of money. But it's the power of compounding, and it's that practice of putting something away every single month, every single week, because when you do that, just remember, anything above zero always compounds on itself. And the thing that I'm going to say it over and over and over again in this podcast, they say that you are most qualified to help the person that you used to be. And I will tell you this, I did not study finance in college. I was not financially savvy growing up. I've told you in the beginning, and if in podcast 1, if this is the first time you're listening, I don't come from money. I was very irresponsible at a very young age. I was as wild as they came. I loved life and I wanted to live it to its fullest. I will tell you, I got in trouble. And guess what happened to me? Guess what? One of the big things that I talked about earlier, I lost my job, right? So I was, living high and I was living the good life, right? I finally had my first, sense of freedom. I had my car and my apartment, and I wanted to be on my own. Well, all of a sudden I'm like, I get the car, I get the apartment, and then I bought a motorcycle because I've been riding motorcycles since I was 10 years old. Well, guess what? I lost my job. And I didn't have any savings. I didn't have anything in the bank. So guess what? Now all of a sudden, right, I was trying to figure out ways to be able to pay my bills, and bad things happened. And that's the whole importance of living beneath your means. Don't stretch yourself so thin to the point of, if something catastrophic were to happen, would you be okay? And that's the most important thing, is you have to prepare for the future. You have to prepare for the unknown. And it's, the Bible even talks about it. It's like, if you lend and do not borrow, right, you're always going to set yourself up for success. Like, you want to be the person lending, not borrowing. That's the person who ends up winning, is the lender, not the borrower. And you always want to make it a practice and a point to live beneath your means. And one of the stories that I like to talk about is just exactly how I got out of a situation, because I found myself in a mound of debt when I came to New York. And I was so full of life and so excited to be here. This was about 10 years ago. And I was working for another company at the time. And so there were all these promises made, and all this money I was supposed to be making. But here's the thing: I was spending money based off of what I was promised to make. And I didn't have this in writing either. So not only was I not paid what I was promised to make, but then there were other expenses that I was covering that ended up driving me into debt. And one of the expenses that I was covering when I came to New York is, as I was working for this other firm, I was driving all over the country paying for their tolls. And so I had about $5,000 in tolls that were on my credit card. And so I marched back to the company and I said, listen, I was like, I can't live like this. I'm like, I'm barely making ends meet. I'm working 85 hours a week, and these tolls are just, they're crushing me, and I'm not making the money that, you said that I was going to be making. And so they end up paying for my tolls, but I was stuck with this big fat bill. And so for me, $5,000, that was just like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to get out of this debt? And so I ended up getting, so my credit was pretty decent. It wasn't great at this time. Again, I had high debt. And so my scores, I think, were like in the 600s. And so what I did is I ended up going and I got a personal loan. So I compared 15 different companies to each other. I did not apply until I was ready to, because you will get hit if you apply for personal loan after personal loan after personal loan. So I only applied for one, and I got approved at a very low interest rate, at least something that was palpable, and it was much lower than the interest rate that I had. And I consolidated all of my credit card debt, and I paid it off with that personal loan. So now I had one fixed monthly payment. And so I put a little bit extra every month when I had a little bit extra. And what I did is I actually nixed all of my unnecessary spending. And so when I nixed all of my unnecessary spending, I mean, I'm talking, I got to the bottom of the barrel, absolutely bare bones minimum. When I say I never ate out, I mean, I never ate out. I did not have my hair professionally done. I colored my hair with box dye. My hairstylist to this day still is like, remember when? And I'm like, yes, I remember when. They would get so mad because I really did a number on my hair, but I didn't care because I was like, you know what? I'm getting out of debt, and I'm not gonna sacrifice, my longevity and my health and my mental peace of mind because I need to have these fancy things. Like, I don't need to keep up with the Joneses. I have no problem shopping at the thrift store, but I didn't buy any new clothes. I didn't buy any new shoes. I never went out to eat. I did the bare bones minimum. I did not buy something unless I absolutely needed it. And what that was so helpful for is it taught me to live, right, again, well beneath my means. And I lived in a deficit. And you really learn to understand what you actually need versus what you want. And there's a really great book out there that I would absolutely implore everybody to read. And it's called The Saint, the Surfer, and the CEO. And in this book, they talk about who the happiest person in life is. And the happiest person in life is not he who has the most, but it's he who needs the least. And that's a fact. And I realize that, and I will tell you that I have had a little and I have had a lot. Now, I prefer being the person who has a lot. And you want to know why? Because I give a lot. I'm a person of contribution. When good people make money, guess what? Everybody benefits. So it didn't matter if I had a little, I shared. If I had a lot, I shared. I'm the same person as when I had a little as when I've had a lot. And I have not even touched what I'm going to do in my lifetime. And understand this, money is not going to make you happy. Stuff is not going to make you happy. The accumulation of things is never going to make you happy. What you have to understand is that you are going to be the exact same person when you have the stuff and the money as you were when you didn't. And so you have to make this shift, this overall shift as far as like who you are as an individual. And they say, the proverbial they, right? It's not that people who are successful are happy. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You see people who are wildly wealthy and famous and have notoriety killing themselves all of the time, right? It's not successful people who are happy. It's happy people are successful. And as you navigate through this crazy maze of life, right? I want you to remember, and I hope that a lot of this resonated with you, because I can tell you these are all lessons that I've learned, and I've learned the hard way. Everything that I have been through, right? This is why I'm here teaching all of you, and I'm teaching you these lessons because hopefully you can avoid a little bit of suffering. I suffered for years, probably well over 20 years, not realizing I did it unnecessarily because I didn't know this stuff. I didn't know where to go. I didn't seek it out. It didn't seek me out. And then all of a sudden, guess what? One day, if you didn't hear my first podcast, a recruiter called me, and that was the beginning of the end. And now the entire world is going to benefit because now I get to tell you my testimony, my story, and share with you the principles as to how to have and live a better life. So I just want you to remember, guys, if you need help, we are here to help you. Go to our website, www.micaabigail.com, request a free consultation. Let's start there. Let's actually have you take a little bit of that hard-earned money and let's actually have you invest it in something that is going to be something of real value. So you can finally say, did you purchase something of real value recently? Yes, I invested in myself. Investing in your credit is only investments that you will make that will compound on itself about 100 times over for the rest of your life. Guys, thanks so much for listening. God bless.